This session is more technology and infrastructure 3. And we have 3 talks today. The first is transparency and collaboration in Wikimedia engineering. The second is fundraising under the hood. And the third is we want scores. So we'll begin with transparency and collaboration with Rob Lanphier, Sumana Harihareswara, and Guillaume Paumier. They'll go on for about 25 minutes. They'll be 25 minutes each.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Hope you've been enjoying your Wikimania. I am Sumana Harihareswara, and this is Rob Lanphier, and this is Guillaume Paumier. We all work at the Wikimedia Foundation. Our boring titles are Director of Platform Engineering, otherwise known as my boss, Guillaume Paumier, my colleague, Technical Communications Manager. I am Engineering Community Manager. We work on the stuff we're about to talk to you about. The Wikimedia Foundation engineers, 70 of them now, do more and more stuff all the time, every year. So how can we make sure the larger Wikimedia community knows what those engineers have been up to without making the engineers spend all their time writing reports instead of coding? How can we make sure the larger Wikimedia community can tell us when you want stuff and can tell us when we've messed up or are about to mess up and work with us to make things happen? So we're going to talk a little about the context, what we've been doing, what we're about to do, and then ask you questions because we need your help. Rob?
All right. And so just one of the things that we're going to do is we're basically going to talk about what we do in terms of the questions that we've been answering over the course of the past few years, and then and then some of the questions that we plan to focus on in the next year or so, and use that as kind of a framework for describing the problems that we're solving right now. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start with some of the questions from last year or before, which is, number one, what the heck is the Wikimedia Foundation doing? And with that, I'll turn it over to Guillaume.
Yeah, so that was one of the questions that we were hearing a lot, especially like 4 years ago and 3 years ago. And so basically the way that we try to answer that question, to address that concern, is by starting to publish monthly engineering reports, starting in August 2010, I think. So since then, the Wikimedia engineering team has been publishing a long engineering report every month. And it has been unanimously acclaimed every time, which is good. It also takes a lot of time to put it together, so we're glad that that time is appreciated by the community.
May I interrupt? Who here reads the monthly engineering report? All right, okay, this is interesting. All right, great.
Actually, as a follow-up question, who reads the whole report? Okay. So among the people who skim through the report, do you have any suggestions about how to make it easier to read? Because we have a lot of activities to report on, and as we embark on more and more projects, the report is growing longer and longer every month. So if you have any suggestions about how to make it easier to stay informed with the report, then you're welcome to talk now or later. Yeah.
Actually, I think
Do you have a mic?
Right.
Just go ahead, Markus.
I just think it's in the nature of such a report to skim and just read passages that you find most interesting. For example, projects I didn't follow, for example. So I don't really know if it could be an aim that everybody reads the whole report, except for Sumana, I guess.
Okay, so Markus's point was that it's in the nature of that kind of reports to just skim through the report and try and only read what you're interested in and not reading the whole report. And I guess that's pretty much it about the engineering reports.
Yeah, so the next question is, how do I help?
One thing that the foundation did to solve this problem was to hire me. Oh, good. Very little laughter. That's good. Maybe I'm actually getting my job done. People are like, oh, well, that's reasonable. The volunteer development coordinator is the position I used to hold and is still on my business cards because I need to get new ones. And so I have done things to smooth the path to volunteers who want to help as software developers and in other technical ways, like maintain the annoying little bugs page for people who want to get started, help overhaul the how to get started page, create or tell people to create tutorials, help lead events, and lead the Google Summer of Code and undergraduate capstone and open source projects. So it used to be if you were a volunteer developer, you might sort of come into try and find stuff out and there would be nothing for you to find. I think we've solved that problem now and are continuing to maintain that pipeline, at least the beginning of it.
All right.
Now, there's the volunteers who, despite our originally kind of terrible entrance mechanisms, did cool things anyway in Wikimedia technology. And they were like, hey, did you see that cool thing I did? Because if we don't know about the cool thing they did, we can't then, for example, deploy it to Wikimedia sites and tell more people about it and get people collaborating. Me existing helps with this, because now there's a person whose job it is to listen and tell more people and publicize stuff and so on. I try and recognize volunteers, get them coming to events, tell them about conferences where they can speak, publish blog posts about them, tell our mailing lists about them, and so on. Another aspect of this is if volunteers do cool things that really ought to be put into the main Wikimedia sites, like if volunteers write new features for MediaWiki or fix bugs or write extensions or whatever, it used to be that the senior developers, many of whom work at the Wikimedia Foundation, weren't reviewing their code fast enough, and therefore there was this bottleneck. We're widening that bottleneck now through partly a program called 20% Time, where Wikimedia Foundation engineers spend about 20% of their time doing bug triage, code review, mentoring other developers, and so on, things that will help the entire volunteer technical community. I can talk more about all of this all the time whenever you want.
All right. So the next question is, what is Wikimedia Foundation going to do about problem X, where X can be anything, and when is it going to happen? And I think one of the things that we've done, which is probably a little bit too well kept a secret, is we've been maintaining a roadmap page on MediaWiki.org. How many people know about this page? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we do. This is actually a little bit nicer, although at least 1 or 2 of those people were employees. So,
yeah, the guy who runs the meeting doesn't count.
But it is linked to. I believe it's linked to from the monthly reports and everything, but it is still a little bit buried. But this is a page that the engineering managers at Wikimedia Foundation update every week. That basically describes what we're doing out, 2 months, 3 months out, and so on. And so it's a really good way if you're trying to figure out what is the Wikimedia Foundation going to be doing. That's one good way of getting some near-term visibility into what we're up to, and then sort of longer-term things. There's been a lot of planning exercises that have gone on MediaWiki.org, such as the goals for the 2012-2013 fiscal year, which just started, as well as there was the product white paper last year. There's a lot of these materials, and I linked to them off the talk description. So if these things are interesting to you, please do go back to the talk description for the session and take a look. And any questions about that? All right. Whoops. So next one, what are you going to do about this project? focus a little bit better here.
So this is also a follow-up question on the monthly report. So the report is a collection of very short status updates, like 2 or 3 sentences for each project. But one of the things that people from the community wanted to do was to get more information about, hey, I saw in the monthly report that you were doing work on the visual editor, but there were only 2 sentences, and I would like to know more. I would like to learn about what's happening behind the scenes and who I can talk to if I want to work on that as a volunteer or whatever. And so I think it started in 2011. We set up a set of project pages that we now call activity pages. And basically, every time there's an engineering project or an engineering activity that Wikimedia Foundation engineers are working on for a significant amount of time, there's a dedicated project page or activity page on MediaWiki.org about this project. And the activity pages are linked to from the monthly report. And they serve as a hub with links to more detailed documentation, to designs, and to monthly or more frequent status updates. The project pages were not used much at first because there were not many people putting stuff on it, and not many people reading them either. But in the past few months, we've made some improvements, notably using a new gadget that makes it much easier to add information to the status pages. And so now I think we're in a good shape. But if you have any suggestions about how to make it even better, then please speak up.
Cool. And just another poll, like these project pages, how many people like have actually found those to be useful resources for you, or even discovered them for that matter? All right.
We gotta work.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, well, let's move into some of the things that we're planning to focus on in the coming year. So as soon as I figure out how to run my... There we go. So, why aren't you solving my problems? And sort of a related question: how do I get this thing that I want fixed? So I guess this is kind of a question for there's an obvious answer for, or a seemingly obvious answer for folks that are developers, which is to submit a patch or contribute directly to development. But I think what's underestimated is how much people who are have other skills can bring to the table. So the short answer is please be organized on our behalf. The long answer is sometimes getting what you need done is just making us aware of that there's a problem in some sort of constructive way. Other times it's not obvious. Even when you do make it aware that like we can really prioritize the issue. So that's the point at which a lot of people just resort to being squeaky wheels, and that can work, but you have to spend social capital to in the process of doing that. So one way to both like make your thing happen faster and build social capital as you do it is to figure out how to participate in sort of an organizing, helpful way. So help us maintain a backlog, sort of be a product manager for a feature. So be the person who builds the justification, like does the metrics, puts together sort of a button-down case for something, and helps bring together the resources, the people, because oftentimes somebody's going to want, say, a user interface feature that needs the expertise of not only a developer but a designer, and would not benefit greatly from having QA associated with it. So there's lots of activities beyond being a developer that are useful activities for volunteers to contribute in. And so those are the things that that we all hope that you can participate in, and things that we're going to spend a lot more time in the coming fiscal year focusing on.
Go ahead.
So, yeah, there's another question, which is, well, I think Rob started to answer the first part of this question, which is, why are you spending time on these other projects? And so this year, Rob briefly mentioned the very detailed goal-setting process, which is taking place publicly on MediaWiki.org, and the link is also posted on the this talk's submission page on the Wikimedia Wiki. So the whole plan and its history is laid out publicly, and you can see the different areas where Wikimedia engineers are going to spend time on, and which project they're going to work on. And there's also the rationale for every one of them, so that you can understand why these projects were selected. As for the why wasn't I consulted part, that's something that we hear a lot, especially from users, from Wikipedia participants or other Wikimedians, who basically stay on their wiki and they're not really interested in what engineers are doing, except when it comes to them, which is fair. But we often run into this, hey, you did this and now you're messing up my workflow or something. And we're trying to improve that, and if you have ideas about how to do it, then please talk to us. One of the things that we want to try this year is to set up a group of ambassadors that we've sort of started to use in the past few years, to try and get the word out about what engineers are working on, and to invite people to provide us feedback and to help us build the tools or prepare for upcoming changes. And we really want that discussion to be a discussion and a two-way discussion, not just a broadcast of information. So if you want to talk to us about becoming an ambassador or providing us feedback about the idea or how to improve the system itself, please come talk to me.
If you are not a software developer, we absolutely need your help a lot. You can tell us when things break. You can actively start testing and trying to break things and then telling us exactly how they broke. You can prioritize bugs, give us information about what's really important and what's not. We are hiring a bug wrangler to do that full time. I may want to hire you. You can write specifications for what you want, the kind of work Rob talked about. You can write documentation of important workflows on your wiki so that people could write tools to automate them, for example. And you can participate in the ambassador stuff that Guillaume just mentioned. Sometimes developers are very excited about their own ideas that may not really work for the movement. Then they want things that will make everyone unhappy, including them. I can't solve problems of consciousness and metacognition, but I can help people by making sure they know the process for how to make things happen. That we have written a how to get your extension deployed on Wikimedia sites guide that includes a lot of collaboration with the Wikimedia Foundation on the sort of design level as well as the technical level, so that we can actually talk to people and figure out, what do you really want? Because probably what you really, really want, the implementation you thought of may not be so well thought out, but what you really, really want probably is the same thing we want. So let's align our efforts on that. And just more systematic communication reaching out and finding people with interesting ideas and talking with them instead of just letting the ball drop when they reach out to us is something that we have tried to do and are continuing to try to do.
And finally, can you please stop breaking the site? So there's, I think, several things that we're doing right now to help alleviate this problem. This is something that you can actually help us with. So we're currently putting this infrastructure in place necessary to test future versions of MediaWiki so that you can test the software without setting it up yourself. That's Wikimedia Labs. We were having developers put their stage their features on labs in the early days, and then we're also building out an environment where everything's integrated together and the totality of features can be tested prior to actually going out onto the main website. So we're and for these testing efforts, we're not only recruiting Wikimedians like yourselves, we're also getting plugged into communities interested in professional software testing. And so we hope to pair Wikimedians with experienced software testers and let them build off of each other's expertise. We're also building test plans and plan on holding testing events so that when somebody comes and says, I want to help, that there's some structure for those that need it in helping out, testing things, finding those pockets of functionality that really need to be tested. And so that's...
and we're hiring that person.
And yes, and we're hiring several people in this group. So you'll see here we've got several positions that we're currently hiring for as well. So please
talk to us.
Come talk to us about any of those if you're interested. And with that, that's the end of our prepared questions, I believe.
Yeah, Ashish, do we have a few minutes for questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
About 3
minutes for questions. 3 minutes for questions. So if you have a question for these lovely folks, please raise your hand and I'll get you the mic.
And actually I have okay. So before that question, for other people in the room, after that question, if you want to tell us why you're here and why you're angry at the Wikimedia Foundation Engineering and why you came here, or I mean, this is your opportunity to not to shout at us, but to tell us what you're unhappy with.
My name is Joshua Gay. I work with the Free Software Foundation and the GNU project. One of my favorite things about the GNU project is the leadership tries to make sure that when a project's maintainer leaves, that somebody's maintaining it. And they help prioritize which ones really need maintainers the most. I've wondered if you've thought about a similar approach for, say, extensions, and helping to, drive focus. Because I think that's one way. There's a difference between being a committer and, say, helping with bugs or whatever, and being able to feel like you own an extension.
Thanks for the question. There are a zillion extensions out there in the MediaWiki universe. Speaking for the Wikimedia Foundation, there's about 100 that get deployed on Wikimedia Foundation sites. Of those, several are unmaintained. And then I'm sure that there are hundreds and thousands of unmaintained MediaWiki extensions just out there. So I've made some effort as part of my work to make sure that extensions that are deployed on Wikimedia Foundation sites under heavy use, very important to specific projects, have more people maintaining them, actually reviewing code for merger. And two of these examples are Upload Wizard, which there are many more people now. There's a Google Summer of Code student working on Upload Wizard. There's Wikimedia Foundation engineers and other people working on Upload Wizard now as maintainers. And Proofread Page, which is extremely important to all the Wikisource projects. And I've encouraged volunteers to contribute more code and to maintain it. There is more work to be done there, and I'd welcome some thoughts from you and other, especially software developers and users, to say, here, this one's really important, and it's unmaintained, so that we can maybe triage and direct our efforts more. Does that sound reasonable?
I have one more question, probably.
Mine's less of a question, more of a comment. I was curious as to what you guys' opinion. There was a discussion going on Wikitech about the ambassador mailing list, and possibly repurposing it so that it is much more users and developers on there both talking to each other about what the users want the developers on Wikitech to work on. That way they don't have to join Wikitech, which is very, very technical all the time.
What's your name again?
Derek Etzra.
Oh, hi, Derek. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, I mean, I think I replied to that thread, and I explained it today that I think that that's something that we want to do, but it will need to get traction from the community as well. So.
As a member of the community, it has traction.
I know that, yeah, we don't have time for any more questions before Katie gives her talk, but things we want to know, we will stay here during, or at least I will stay here during the coffee break because I want to hear some things from you, like, where do you get your Wikimedia technical news? It sounds like about a third of you read the monthly report, which is what we put the most effort into currently. Probably most of you are not on the Wikimedia developers mailing list. We don't have an official, like, here's what's happening in Wikimedia technology Twitter account or Facebook thing. Where are you getting your news? We want to know that. Have you experienced global message delivery? We don't use it. Should we? And please, join Wikitech ambassadors. We linked to that mailing list from our talk description. Medium to high traffic, plain English list for discussion among developers and Wikimedia users. And we would love for you to have a role in disseminating information to your local communities and reporting back issues raised on your local wikis. So we can talk about all that in the coffee break.
Hi. Is this mic on? Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. So I am Katie Horn. I am the fundraiser tech lead for the Wikimedia Foundation, and I'm going to take you on a very quick tour, and I mean very quick, of the fundraising infrastructure. More or less for beginners because nobody really knows this stuff, so that's okay. So, what it isn't is a donor punching through their screen and giving you money. Although we really would like for people to get the impression that it is that simple. And that's part of the reason that nobody knows what we're really doing, is because most of our effort is sort of directed into making it seem very, very simple. Because people like giving money to things that seem simple to navigate. But that's not what it is, as much as we would like for it to be that way. This is a very oversimplified diagram of sort of the simplest possible setup that's, yeah, you could probably apply this to just about any payment system that you find. So, gosh, I wish this was bigger, but I'll put this up online later. Actually, I'm going to go through the pieces. So the only thing that I really want to mention here is that most of the function of a system like this is to, number one, make the payment, make sure that the money actually does change hands. And number two, keep a record of it. That's really important. We need to know where our money is coming from and how much we have and all of that stuff. Oh yeah, and there's a thank you aspect too. The donor needs to know that the payment was made. So the first part of that is some kind of system of forms. You go, you know you want to donate, and you go click on a link, and then you get a form that says, how much would you like to donate? And you tell them that, and then it says, okay, I need a little more information, and you give them that, and then there's kind of a gosh thanks, we got it. And in order to actually get the payment, you need a payment gateway. And that is a third party whose job it is to actually make the money change hands. Let's see. So the data comes from the form, goes out of the system to the payment gateway, and then comes back with some kind of response. Like, did it work? Did it not work? What happened with that? This is also another standard component of any payment system, and that is, if in real time something happened when the data was coming back from the payment gateway and you don't know what happened, maybe somebody tripped over a cord somewhere and the network went down, that money's going to change hands, but you wouldn't find out about it in real time. So they came up with this listener thing. And we've got our little dish that's listening for messages coming in from our payment gateway. And that they will just send a message to us whenever a payment changes status. Like, it goes actually from the bank to our account. Or, anything like that. They send a message to us. So first the server needs to determine if it's a legitimate message or not. If it's not a legitimate message, like it comes from a bad source or someone's just trying to get us to stuff our system full of garbage, then we go, no, you can't do that, throw it in the garbage. If the message makes sense, we can continue processing it. But if it doesn't, we sort of have to log that and then let someone know, hey, we got a weird message we don't know what to do with, maybe you should look at that. But if it does make sense, then we can go ahead and normalize that data. And that just basically means take whatever format this data is coming in as and make it standard for our system. And then if we get to the point where we're trying to add it to the database and we go, hang on, this is an incomplete message, we need more data. It made sense, but there were missing pieces. In this system, you have to have some kind of intervention to rebuild that thing. You can't just put it in partially. But if it is all there, complete, no problem, you just write it to the database. And there is yet another way to make sure that you have all of the information that you should have from the payment gateway. Usually, they will supply you with a daily list of all the transactions that happen in some kind of predetermined format, like a CSV, basically a spreadsheet. And your system comes through at an appropriate time and parses that thing and checks the database to make sure that every entry in there actually exists in your database where you're keeping the records. And if it doesn't exist in there, then you try to put it back in, because obviously something went wrong. But it happened, so you need to keep track of it. So that brings us back to this same old slide, now that hopefully it makes a little more sense. So we've got the donor up there, coming down to the form, the gateway. And if the message is okay, then it goes to our database, which is basically through a product called Civi CRM. It just keeps track of contacts and donations and things like that. And there's the listener up in the corner and the auditing down there. But unsurprisingly, we can't do that. That is way too simple, and we have kind of bizarre needs for a fundraiser. First of all, every minute of every fundraiser that we run is an A/B test. So it may be a banner that we're testing against another banner. It may be a landing page that we're testing against another landing page. And a landing page is what you get when you click through that banner. And the series of forms also that come after that. We are testing everything against variations of itself all the time. So it's not just a simple one form, everything straightforward situation. We have a lot of different situations, and we're making more of them for ourselves all the time. So that means we have 1 kabillion forms. And it's not just the A/B testing that means that's the case. The forms have to be translated into all the different languages that we support. And last year, in 2011, that was 112 languages. And it's not just the languages that the forms need to be translated into. There's also an extreme amount of localization on these forms that we have to do. One of the things we found in our A/B testing is that things that work very, very well in payments forms in one part of the world don't work at all in other parts of the world. There will be extra fields that people get confused and they don't donate, or there's fields they expect that we don't supply. Maybe they're expecting the order to be different. It's just unfamiliar and people bail out. But also, there are certain kinds of payment methods, in addition to those being very localized. Not every payment method is available everywhere in the world, so obviously we only want to offer things that people are able to donate in. But there's also this component of some payment methods have stigmas in parts of the world. For instance, some people see the option to donate through PayPal, and they don't want to give you any money at all. I can get that to you after. So yeah, we have to deeply localize all of these forms. So there's literally just tons of them. We also have multiple payment gateways. Despite what they will tell you in their marketing materials, nobody really has global coverage for all the payment types everywhere. So we have to be able to communicate consistently with any one of the ones we choose to go with for any given transaction. Another benefit to having more than one payment gateway is if there is any overlap, we have the option to fail over if we, for instance, turn the fundraiser on and accidentally melt their service. Which brings me, oh wait, not quite. So this is sort of a picture reimagining of the diagram with all of those things I just said. Instead of one form, you have a giant cloud of forms. And from all of those forms, that data must be normalized so that any data from any form is all in the same format. Makes it much easier to handle. And then, once we have the normalized data, we pick our payment gateway, and then we have to stage that data for the payment gateway because their data format is not our data format, and of course they're all different from each other. And then some imaginary payment gateways, like PayDude up there, they don't even come back to your own system. You're sending them off into the world, and you probably have no idea what happened after that until you get a message from the listener or some audit files. But sometimes they do come back to you. And of course, we've chosen to make our lives even more complicated by doing this. Instead of loading a whole form, we get an iframe from them for things like credit card numbers so that we don't ever have to see those. They just go straight to the payment gateway, and that keeps us much safer as far as, you know, not being able to see any sensitive data. It's just better if we don't have that option. We also have a very confusing fraud problem. And it might seem strange that credit card fraudsters would donate money to a charitable organization in the first place, but what they are doing is testing to see if those cards that they've stolen work before they go somewhere else and go crazy with them. So we like to sort of take these things into our own hands because we can see these patterns, which of course are always changing because we're always changing our rules to combat them. Yeah, and also payment gateways, frequently, if you have a very simple system, your one payment gateway will be able to meet the needs of whatever you've got. But since, once again, we have multiple gateways, we want all of our fraud detection to be consistent across all payment types and all that stuff. So we basically do it ourselves because it's better that way. And also, most payment gateways have these anti-fraud rules that just do not make sense for us. Like they will, for instance, block an entire country because they seem sketchy. And yeah, we can't do that. Or they will block IP addresses if you try to donate from it more than, say, 5 times in 2 days. And that also would not work for us. So yeah, it's just better if we're looking at the patterns ourselves. And we also have in our donation system very sudden high load. Like we turn this fundraiser on and all of a sudden the traffic shoots through the roof. It's very small, so I will read it for you. Let's see if I can. So basically, the very first day of the fundraiser in 2011, we got $1.2 million in one day. That's about 65,000 donations of $18.87 a piece on average. And that's from like barely any traffic before we turn the fundraiser on to suddenly we have banners and just more or less, yeah, it's crazy. Because it is such a high load so suddenly, we have to do everything that we can to move that load down the pipe so that it does not affect the donor experience. One of the things that we also noticed doing A/B testing is that tiny slowdowns in the load time on the payments cluster, people will stop trying to donate, even if it's like a half a second delay. It's some kind of psychological thing that they think, oh, okay. So we lose money if they experience any symptoms of having a high server load. So what we do to combat that is we have implemented message queuing. And that basically just means instead of trying to process a message right now, we will throw it somewhere that we can have some other server that the donors never get to. They can look at that, those machines can look at it later and process it as resources become available. So there's like a little bit of a delay between it, actually happening and getting in our database, but it's there. It's like, one of the other reasons for that is that it's a nice buffer. So it'll just get to it eventually. And it is very quick writing these messages. It's not like writing to a database or anything like that. It's very, very low overhead to be sending messages to queues all the time. So we like to do that. And of course, if you're writing to queues, you need a queue consumer. It's a little picture of a queue consumer. That's probably the most fragile part of our entire system, because if anything strange gets into the queue consumer can explode in fantastic and new and exciting ways. And of course, the queue consumer is, it's basically scheduled to run for our main queue just about every 3 minutes. So every 3 minutes, there's an opportunity for an explosion to happen, and I'll get all kinds of emails and alerts and things. So. And with the addition of these queues as a place to sort of stash data that we haven't actually written yet, we have a good opportunity to go back to this listener.
5 minutes.
Okay. We can go back to the listener and also the auditing, and those places where there used to be manual processes to go rebuild messages, well, now we can do that automatically by going into the queue and seeing if there's any data in there that maybe we need to rebuild these things that may come back mangled, which happens fairly frequently. This is one of my favorite parts. The orphan rectifier. It's going to require a little bit of explanation, but we have we noticed a situation where when we would send users off to a third party to enter their credit card information, so it's safe and we can't see it, they're supposed to come back from that when a payment completes. Some low percentage of the time, but it's also very consistent, this low percentage, they don't come back in a way that we recognize, like either someone panics and closes the browser before they come back to us, or we really don't know. But we also can't save permanently any donor information unless they've actually already given us money and we know they have. So we've got this weird, this percentage of like orphaned transactions that we couldn't figure out how to combat. So what we do now is when someone leaves our system, we add a message to a queue that says, okay, there's a guy who left the system, and it's in a queue, so it's not permanent, but it's waiting. And when they come back, we add a very, very small message related to that first message that says he came back. We like to call those anti-messages. So what we do when we consume off this queue is the very first thing is we get all the messages and the anti-messages, and if they match up, we collide them, and they explode. So if there's anything left after we collide all of the messages and anti-messages over a certain age, we know that those are orphan payments. So we go ahead and go try to get the status on those payments. And if it's in a state that we have to do something in order to make the payment finally go through, because of our fraud system, we do that, then we'll just like put it back in the pipeline and they go through as if nothing had happened. So one more time, this was our old oversimplified diagram of the simple system, which we really, really can't do. And here's what it actually looks like. And if you could see the colors, all the colors sort of, they sort of outline the different systems, and so you can tell easily when data's moving from one place to the next and
How many
all that
people
stuff.
are running all of this? 3? All right. So,
Thank you very much.
We do have time for about one question. If anyone has any questions, I'm sure Katie would love to hear it.
So when the queue blows up like that, have you ever lost data?
Yes.
Have you ever lost data that you've not been able to recover?
There are other places that we can go. Once again, it's a manual process once you lose it out of something that you can get to automatically. So we also log a lot of things that we can go and scour for later. But sometimes we just have to go to our gateway and go, okay, look, we don't know what happened there. Can you just like somehow export this information for us? And generally they can do that.
Good.
Thanks again, Katie.
Thank you.
So the next talk is called We Want Scores. But in particular, it's about music scores, and it's by Anja Ebersbach and Markus Glaser. So please welcome them. This talk lasts from now 11:25 until 11:50, and then just after this talk, there's another coffee break with snacks. So that's another great time to talk to the speakers if you had any more questions for them, or if you wanted to give Sumana your resume.
So, welcome everybody. We want to talk about music markup within the Wikimedia projects. My name is Anja Ebersbach. This is Markus Glaser. We are from Wikimedia Germany, and first of all, I want to say that we are not part of a developers team which that is concerned with this topic, but well, we are just interested in this topic, and we wish to revive this discussion somehow, and maybe to push the project a little bit. Yeah, that's why probably we are not going to tell you anything new. We just want to give you a little bit of input, and then we want to discuss with you the next steps. Okay, this is a short outline of the presentation. I just want to talk about the present state of the extension, then give you a little, I want to show you the workflow of these extensions. Then we talk about the technical obstacles, some use cases, and then I want to discuss with you. Okay, what is the present state? If you look at the Wikimedia projects, then you can see that there are only sparse notification of music, and for example, here you can see one example. As you see, this is only an image which was embedded within the page, and this is not really the wiki way to put the music into the wiki, and it has several disadvantages. First of all, there's no way to collaborate to edit collaboratively, which means that if you want to change the tune, you have to set the scores within an external music authoring system, and then you have to output an image, and you have to embed it within the Wikipedia again. So it's very burdensome, and well, as I said before, it's not the wiki way to do it. Another advantage is another disadvantage of this procedure is that if you put the image into the Wikipedia, then this is the image is a very has lots of information, but you cannot process it, you cannot reuse it, and you cannot share it, and for example, you cannot produce a sound file, for example. So to change this, we will actually need some extensions within the Wikipedia, and it would be the way that you open Wikipedia article, for example, then you put in the music in a certain notification. There are different notification available, ABC, for example, Lillipond. Then you save the wiki page. You can see the scores, and you could also process it the way that you have an output of PDF or sound files. For this, you need some extensions. One of that is the notification system, as I said. So far, there's Lillipond, and you also need the extension itself, which is called SCORE. And for the output of the sound file, you need another extension, which is the awk handler. But maybe Markus can tell you more about that.
Yeah. I just wanted to show you briefly how it looks like in like a real world example. Again, these extensions are not written or maintained by any of us. They're written. The SCORE extension was written by a guy called XIII, and yeah, we'll talk about it. So
Speak into the microphone.
Okay, I try to. Is that better? Okay.
Even more.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Can I just take it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's way easier for me to work. Okay. So. Here it is. So this is just basically a test media wiki, and I just want to give you a brief idea of how it's going to work. Unfortunately, I did not get the sound bit to work, so I would have liked to play Jingle Bells to you, but yeah. Okay, so what you can see here is a score, scores, and what it looks like is it's. If you're familiar to wiki text, you should be able to read and write this if it is big enough on the screen. So we just get a normal score tag. We have some keywords, and then basically there's a score notation which puts down the scores by their names. If you are a musician, this is not hard to do. So I have some basic music skills, and I know how to write this. And yeah, there are external editors for this. So what you can do, and don't be scared now, is you can actually use an external editor and just use the whole code this editor is putting out, and then you can write basically a almost ready to print notation of anything. This course extension is pretty, say the Lillipond notation is pretty developed, and if any of you who's been following this course discussion in here, okay, so any one of you who's been following the discussion will probably know that there is almost a set decision to use Lillipond in this. Yeah, let me just go back from this notation to the nice one. Okay. Actually, the current process as is seems to have some obstacles which lead to this great extension that haven't been implemented yet on all the MediaWiki sites. So the main obstacles I have found in the discussions is there is a security issue about the Lillipond software, which seems have to be solved by now. So there at least is hope.
The notation format of Lillipond was criticized to be too complex. The solution here is that the scores extension also allows for a simplified format called ABC, which so you can put the Lillipond. As you've seen, there are different levels of complexity. I've shown you the medium and the high level of complexity. There's a simple level, that's ABC level. So it's even simpler than the notation I've shown to you. The current development on this course extension seems to be somewhat stalled, but as I've seen it, I mean, on the there's a code review done in May, I think. There are some developers that have a look at the extension. Is Graf Zahl here, by chance? Okay, he's the original developer of the extension, but he seems to be occupied otherwise at the moment. But as I said, there's hope. There are many people supporting this. So what I think is that we should not talk about whether this is being done, but we will. I assume we will get scores. So what do we do with it, right? So what are the use cases? And that's basically the point where I think we should get into an open discussion. I have a few things like use cases that it could be used for, like older compositions. We could write down, transcribe the original sources and put them from, say, handwriting into machine readable notation. It might be that you have it might be a place to put original work in, as in Wikicommons. Put your own compositions there. There might be transcriptions of like famous jazz solo recordings or so, which are not available at the moment in a scores format. Yeah, and actually on Wikisource, there are already a lot of pages containing sheet music, right? Any thoughts about, well, one question that was bugging us and was troubling us is, where would music scores be appropriate to put on it? Would it be Wikisource? Would it be Wikicommons? Would it be Wikipedia? Would it be all of them, or would there be the need for like a new platform called Wikimusic? I know there have been discussions about this. In the audience, do you have any thoughts about that? Okay.
I personally would recommend deploying it across all of them. I feel like if, for example, the Wikipedia page. Oh, yes, sorry. Should I start over? Yes. Yeah. I personally would say deploy it across all of them. For example, that page on Wikipedia that you showed that had a music score in it. It would be nice if we could use your extension in order to do such things, as you were saying on Wikisource. That's a beautiful place to have it as well. I wouldn't say deploy it on Wiktionary, for example. I wouldn't do it there, but any place where it seems appropriate, where somebody could possibly make use of music, I would say that would be a good place to deploy it.
I think there's an argument to be made that instead of so what is going to happen? People will want to display snippets of music in score format instead of lots of different places allowing themselves to reinvent the wheel. I mean, it seems reasonable to deploy this extension lots of places, but try socially to centralize it in one space the places where a bunch of these bits of music live. And Commons and Wikisource seem like reasonable places to me, but the communities would want to talk about that, I guess.
Are there any other places already conducting this? Any other websites that are already using similar tools to store music?
Yes, so Lillipond, the notation software is used rather widely on. Yesterday I found a choral database which lists about, I think, tens of thousands of chorals that are written down, and the notation is Lillipond. You have found something, I think?
Mutopia.
Yeah, Mutopia, which also does transcribe music and tries to provide sheet music. That's their main goal. So I think there are communities out there we might just go and ask. And in the discussions, I've seen that people from those communities are already watching the discussions about deploying scores on MediaWiki, and they seem to be really willing to help and to provide their experience.
A quick timing note, we have a little more than 10 minutes for questions, so there's plenty of time for more Q&A. If anyone has any more thoughts?
On the topic of what I was saying before, I should add, I would treat them similar to how you would treat images, in that, as you were saying, like Commons would be a wonderful spot for something like that, but I would treat them as another type of media.
How does this integrate with the new visual editor that they'll be releasing in a couple of months?
I think some people in this room are about to kill me if I say something about using written music in the visual editor. But
write an extension.
Yeah.
I would love to see that, but I'm not doing it.
So I actually would like to do that. So
I'm a developer at Wikia, and also an amateur musician, and I've been working on a couple of little toys. One of them is this, which does embedded tab notation.
Sure.
Yeah, I can plug it in real quick. So I'm planning on deploying this on Wikia at some point in the future, mostly for I don't know. There's major copyright issues with what people actually want to use guitar tab notation for, which is mostly to learn Green Day songs.
Because they're awesome.
Because they are awesome, but I don't have that one.
Have an adapter for
The Mac thing.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll do the rest of it.
So there is an existing project which I found called Vex tab, which is a pure JavaScript based music rendering system. It uses a text format, which is kind of nicely compatible with the existing MediaWiki, right? Because it's just text embedded in a magic word, a tag. So it takes that text and it renders it with JavaScript, which is pretty cool. Also has SVG output and stuff like that, so you could have a fallback in the case where there's no JavaScript. Yeah, cool. And so my long-term plan for this, which I am going to work on, is this. So it's not thinking. Do you have to hit a button or not? It says no signal. Stupid Macs.
There is no escape.
There it goes. All right, so real quick, I think I can go this way. Here we go. All right, so this, like I said, is an existing open source project. It was done by a Google dude. It mostly displays music notation in tab format. That's what I've been using it for, but it actually does.
Does everyone know the difference between score and tablature?
Yeah. Probably not. So
These are two different things.
This is tablature, which is notation written for people who can't read music like me. And this is an actual score. So it does both formats. I've got it hooked up dynamically here so that anything you actually change in here also changes up there. So here's an example. If I just delete some stuff, it automatically changes that. Or if you write, you know, anything. Like I said, it has kind of a weird text-based format, but
We're used to that.
yeah. So I've been having fun working on this. I don't expect it will be easy to get it deployed on MediaWiki, but I'm chatting with the guys about that. I am, like I said, planning on deploying this on Wikia somewhere, making it an available extension. Could lead to some cool projects, and I am going to integrate it with the visual editor when that project is complete. It'll probably just be a plugin. should be pretty easy to do. So.
Does it do audio? It doesn't, right?
What's that?
It doesn't actually generate audio.
No, it doesn't. Although that would be probably also easy enough to do, I imagine. And it'd be cool to actually add it as a compatible format for the Scores extension. That might be a good place to integrate it. So, because I'm just doing this for fun, but I am hoping on working on it. This text notation was invented by that guy who was working on that project.
Google dude?
The Google dude.
We do have a question, if I can quickly.
Yeah, I use a MIDI editor that you store everything as a MIDI file, and it can display it in a score format, and I assume tablature if you wanted it to. Have you all given any thought to doing things in that manner?
Yes, so actually the LilyPond extension that will be used does have a converter from MIDI to notation and vice versa. So that is a thing I think we might talk about, what would be a workflow for that. But in principle it's possible to use a MIDI file and convert it into scores.
It seems like it's the natural way to store music somehow.
Yeah.
It sure contains a lot of stuff that's not typically incredible in MIDI.
So there are differences between MIDI and notation. I think yesterday I've read that in scores there are about 300 different items you can put on a score, whereas MIDI has about 60 or so. So if you really want to reproduce like a modern classical piece, you might need more than MIDI just to display it.
Yeah, also MIDI is also, the file format is also binary, and MediaWiki is just not really great at storing binary formats. It'd be really nice to have a text-based format, and there are several to choose from, so that'd probably be ideal, in my opinion.
What's about LaTeX? Wouldn't it be possible to use LaTeX for the music? I think MediaWiki has a great LaTeX implementation, and we are using it in math articles, and there's a package called MusicTech, which works really great for editing music sheets. So, what about that?
The tech package for music is not enabled on Wikimedia. Will it be?
Yeah.
You can also integrate LilyPond into tech directly. There's a LilyPond LaTeX extension, and I've successfully used that in the past for doing books with LilyPond and LaTeX from MediaWiki.
I am aware of a discussion LilyPond against tech and LilyPond 1, but actually I do not know the exact arguments for pro and con. So how's the time frame? Are there any?
There's 4 minutes left.
Are there any more questions?
But actually, now that I think about it, I'll take a look.
Microphone, please.
Oh. I'll take a look, but it might be actually possible, and sometimes it's easier for us to enable extensions on Wikia than it is on Wikipedia, because we have fewer. You don't have to actually answer to the community at all. We just get to do stuff if it's cool and if it's fun. So I may try to enable that actually now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because at least, if nothing else, it would be a good playground. You can actually test it, debug it, get it working, and actually try to experiment with some of the ways of getting a community to participate. It's all MediaWiki still, so I'll give it a shot.
Great.
Yeah. So that was basically just answered my last question, which is how would we proceed? And I see two things that need to be done, and I will try to put my 2 cents in there, which is we need to get this extension fixed, and we need to get it tested at some places.
Yeah, I guess one final thing. I mean, I don't think we're very far away from it being ready for the Wikimedia sites as well. Like as far as something we could at least enable on, say, test 2 at first to make sure that it's ready for production. But I was just doing a little bit of research just to see where things seem to be stalled, and I think just a matter of having some of the conversations here this week, and we might actually be able to unstick it quite a bit.
Cool. Great.
Of course, I don't represent the entire community. That would be impossible.
No?
No, I know. Strange, isn't it? But I do represent myself, and I would have to say that I really personally feel like I would go ahead and vote towards having these sorts of things deployed across the Wikimedia projects.
For slight background, not only are you in favor of this, we have a system where we track people saying that there are problems with Wikimedia sites or requesting new things. It's called Bugzilla. And within Bugzilla, this is the 189th bug ever filed. There are now hundreds of thousands, right? There are tens of thousands of bugs open now, and bug 189, which is to get musical score notation on Wikimedia sites, was years ago. So thank you for working on this. In 2004, right. So thanks to you and Grafsal and Owen and everybody who's working to make this a reality for all the Wikimedia projects.
Did you just, as an editorial remark, do you just have that memorized? Like, I didn't see you use a computer.
Everyone knows about bug 189. Except you.
Now I do. Now I do.
I mean, it kind of haunts our dreams. Yeah.
Any other questions?
We have about just a couple seconds left for maybe one more question if we have it. Otherwise, we can wrap up. And you all will go to a coffee break. All right, well, thanks again to you guys and to all the other speakers as well. There is a coffee break, talk with the speakers, give Sumana your resume. Cheers.